Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, whichever the case may be, for all of you listening out there across the planet Earth. Welcome to a brand new special edition of Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Bryan Ouellette, coming to you live from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains on this July 7th, 2021. Tonight, I am pleased to announce that we are joined by the amazing talent of Eugenie Bondurant. You know her from The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, Conjuring 3, as well as so many other movies and productions. She is an amazing person, and we are very blessed to have her with us tonight to talk about archetypes, particularly her role in The Conjuring, taking on the dark archetypes that are necessary for a horror film. The subject tonight is the occultism of acting, and we've got 2 fantastic hours for you. So sit back, get yourself a drink. You're going to love this one. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's show. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening of great conversation of a wonderfully esoteric nature. I am so pleased with this particular episode that we've got for you tonight. This is a special Wednesday edition, and it's between seasons. I told you last time, a few weeks ago, that our previous season had concluded, and we'll be starting up again for a new season coming up in the end of August, beginning of September, somewhere around there. I haven't decided yet when we will start booking new episodes and new guests, and I'll let you know. I'll let you know on Twitter, on social media, also on the Nicolayan Network, when to expect the next season of Vestiges. But we're going to, like I said, keep it more consistent than it's been in the past. I know you guys love this show, and I enjoy being able to bring it to you. I think there's a lot that can be gained from a show of this kind. It kind of shows you that there's a lot more to religion than just the conventional topics, and there's a lot more to the Nicolaitan Catholic Church than I think people think by terms of, by the terms that we use, like Catholicism or Christianity. Yes, we are all those things, but we are so much more. And the very fact that we step outside of the box, I think, is really what's important here. That is the lesson to be learned. And if you are someone that likes that type of innovative thinking and are like myself, you don't like to throw the baby out with the bathwater, religion's caused a lot of problems. So rather than get rid of religion, how about we fix it? And that's hopefully what the Nicolaitan Catholic Church is attempting to do and has been doing for the last 10 years since the tradition was originally established. So I welcome you tonight. And just a few things I want to mention real quick before we get started here. We will be taking, in the first hour, we'll be just talking and going over tonight's topic and really just engaging the subject matter and seeing where it takes us. This is a conversational show. It's very casual in that respect. We just enjoy the conversation and let it happen organically. That's what it's all about. We'll take a break towards the top of the hour, and then when we come back for the second half of the show, I will open up lines. Okay, you can call into the show now if you want to wait on hold the whole time. That's perfectly fine. And that's something that you can do to secure your place. If you have a question or a comment tonight, particularly for our guest, that's something you can do. You can call in now. And that number, if you'd like to write it down or call in, is 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. That's a number to call. Okay, that'll get you into the switchboard. What that's going to do, though, if you're listening on YouTube, and I know a lot of you prefer to watch on YouTube, the sound's better and you get to see me. Some people like that. I don't know. But, here I am. If you're listening on YouTube, there's going to be about a 20-second delay between what you hear on the phone and what you are watching on YouTube. Okay? The phone is going to be ahead of where YouTube is because of that delay. So don't get confused. If you're calling in and waiting to be taken on the air, listen just on your phone. You can hear the show on your phone and mute YouTube. That way you're not going to have that disconnect of time where I think a lot of people get confused and they hang up. Don't let that happen to you. You'll miss your place. You'll lose your place. And I think sometimes that confuses people. Now, if you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, it should be linked up perfectly. There should not be any delay between what you're hearing and when you call in. So that's a different matter for those of you listening on Blog Talk Live. All of the other platforms are basically on demand, so you don't have to worry about those. The live channels are basically Blog Talk and YouTube. Okay, so it's only YouTube listeners that are going to have that issue. So you can call in now, but make sure that you mute YouTube and then you listen live on your phone. So that way, when I take you on the air, you'll know that I'm talking to you, and you'll know that your call has been taken, okay? You can start calling in now. That's perfectly fine, but we won't be taking calls until the next hour. And that's basically the only announcement I have for you tonight. Can you believe it? I came back from vacation. I feel relaxed. I am rejuvenated. We needed this vacation. Went down to Florida and just hung out on the beach or by the pool for basically the entire week with pina coladas. So that, in my mind, is as close as you can get to paradise. And I enjoy, being able to just have a reason to do nothing. It's very important sometimes to have a reason to do nothing. And that's what I've been doing for the last week, doing nothing as much as I possibly can. And it worked out pretty good. We had beautiful weather. It was fantastic weather. And it looks like all the rain came after we left. But it looks like Florida was largely spared from the storm. And that's a good thing. So we're very happy about that, because that could have actually disrupted our show tonight. Eugenie, our guest tonight, is actually in Florida. So we're very grateful that the storm did not disrupt our plans for this evening. But before we get started here, let's go ahead and see how Sister Mary Joan is doing. How are you, Sister?
Good evening, everyone. Good to be here once again. And yes, I am thankful, too, that the storm didn't bring any damage or torrential rain to anybody.
Yeah, looks like it's heading out towards
Had a little
Savannah, so I mean it's not going to even affect us here in the Atlanta area, so that's good.
Yeah, we had a little rain come down through here on the south side a few hours ago, but it was nothing more than just a gentle rain.
Yes. Yeah. So we will let's go ahead and make sure that we keep an eye tonight on the chat, because sometimes people prefer to just ask their questions in the chat room rather than call into the show, though we really prefer you call in because it's so much more interesting to talk to someone rather than just dictate a question that's being asked. We get to hear your voice. We get to ask you questions back if need be. It's a better way to do it. But Sister Mary Joan will keep an eye on the chat. Sister, feel free to interrupt me at any point. If you see a good question, keep a note of them, write them down, whatever. And we'll take them to the discussion as the show progresses tonight.
All right, we'll do.
Thank you so much. Well, I don't even really need to do some dramatic introduction here. Most of you are fans of Ghost Adventures. I know that most of my audience is made up of people that just love Ghost Adventures and love paranormal reality television, and that's how most of you know me. So I also know that most people who love paranormal television are huge fans of the Conjuring series. I know that before I even got into this work, or at least, reality television, before I was even involved with Ghost Adventures, I was a huge fan of the Conjuring series. So if you are a fan of Conjuring, if you saw the recent movie, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, also known as Conjuring 3, then our guest tonight, Eugenie Bondurant. She played the Occultist in this movie. If you haven't seen the movie, we're going to be giving away a lot of spoilers. So you might want to tune out. I hate to tell you to do that, but you might want to, turn off and watch the movie and then come back and listen to the archive of this show, because we're going to probably spoil some things for you tonight. But hopefully the movie's been out for a while now. You've had a chance to see it, most of you, hopefully, and so it won't hopefully be too bad. But obviously we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things involving the movie as well as Eugenie's work. But you also, you might not even realize that you've seen Eugenie in so many other productions. She has been on The Hunger Games. She has been in Fear of Rain. She has been on Saturday Night Live. She's been in Fight Club, Star Trek, The Next Generation, Frasier. It's amazing how many times you can run into Eugenie Bondurant on some of your favorite popular shows. It's really such an exciting thing to have Eugenie here. Sister Mary Joan and I were fortunate enough to meet Eugenie on set. Well, no, you didn't meet her on set. We met her on set, but then we went to dinner and you came you after work.
Yeah, I met her at dinner. Yeah. It was such a joy too. That was a great dinner we had.
It was, and we started up a lot of conversation that gets into some of these esoteric topics. And those of you who have listened to me for a long time know that I have always discussed how acting is a sort of magical operation. There is absolutely an occultism to it. Anytime you're engaging archetypes, which is really the substance of the universe and the very things that make up and animate life, these are living things. These are sentient things, and they are powerful things. And actors are dealing with them all the time. There's inherent risk in that, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight too. But Eugenie is a very unique guest to have, because she's not just a incredible actor, but she's also a teacher, and so she understands some of that dynamic, and that's where a lot of our conversations went. So when we were having these dinners and we were talking about things, I know I went on vacation, we stopped by, we were in Tampa, and we stopped by and had dinner with Eugenie on another occasion, and always getting into these deep philosophical talks. I thought, wouldn't this be great to become an episode of Vestiges After Dark, and that's what sort of spawned the idea. And we are so grateful that she was able to take time, and she's busy. All actors are very, very busy people, and she's taking time out. She actually, I think she left a party early tonight just to be able to make sure she was able to be on the show. So, I mean, that's how wonderful she is and how grateful we are. So let's not hesitate any further and welcome Eugenie Bondurant to Vestiges After Dark. How are you tonight, Eugenie?
Bryan, I'm doing great. Thank you so very much for having me on your show. What an honor, really. And honestly, I'm a little intimidated because I enjoy hanging out with you guys so much, and I hope I live up to everyone's expectations. So saying that right.
Come on now.
I don't think you have to worry about that. I mean, like I said,
no worries there. That's for sure.
You might not realize it, Eugenie. You are iconic to a lot of my audience, and it goes back to the fact that the Conjuring series has become almost like a cult following. It really has an impression that it's made into pop culture, and it's kind of like some of these other series we see, like Supernatural's another one. It has this sort of cult following where it has a life of its own. It has its own canon of events, and it becomes part of people's life. And Conjuring's like that. And now you're such a big part of this series as being one of the the villain, really. I mean, let's face it.
Right.
Yeah. Which kind of brings us to
out on the mantle of being that. Yeah. What an experience.
Yeah.
Really, truly. I don't say that in irony. I actually say it in joy and with pleasure, not pleasure that pleasure that I had a great time doing that, playing that role. But anyway, a lot of fun. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize what an incredible experience this would be going in. I had heard of the Conjuring films. I'd honestly seen, before I booked this, I'd seen The Nun without even realizing that it was part of the Conjuring universe. And I saw it by myself. My husband was not home with me, and it was dark at night, late.
Oh, man.
Which is really surprising for me.
Yeah.
That was actually one of my favorites.
And I went, wait a second. Okay, will I have bad dreams from this? No, and I didn't. And now, watching the other two Conjurings, Conjuring 1 and Conjuring 2, took me a little while before I would do that. But for some reason, The Nun, I felt a little bit more at ease watching it. I don't know why. So, there you go.
That's fun. Well, did you see the Annabelles too? Have you watched those yet?
Oh my gosh, no. Again, animation, a doll having, I think that's a little bit, that it would take me, I would have to watch that during the afternoon.
Yeah.
Now, and have a palate cleanser after. Because those kinds of things, not to jump right into the pool, but I don't like to invite those kinds of, I don't invite those kinds of things into my life.
Yeah.
And when I watch that, I think, no, a little dangerous. That's not where I want to go, and I don't want to even have that spirit. That type of energy is not even welcome around me, which is ironic. And I'm playing this character, the occultist.
I mean, I guess from a certain point of view, it's ironic, but also from a practical point of view, I can kind of see where it's different, because as the audience, you are now experiencing the full reality of the archetype, because the audience is the one that sees the finished product. As the actor, you're merely doing your job, and let's face it. I mean, the day that we came and spent all day on set, you were filming basically the scene with Vera Farmiga where you kind of confront her in her vision with that very haunting line, "Then your God has damned you." We saw that, and I mean, that one line, I think there was 20 takes of it. They took it so many different ways, They're always adjusting lighting and moving cameras and moving microphones and doing all these other things that it really kind of takes you out of the reality of the experience that the audience never gets to see. So I can see where the mechanics of acting feels a lot safer, perhaps, than being a person at home by themselves at night watching, the Conjuring or watching Annabelle.
The Conjuring, Annabelle. Yeah.
So it makes sense.
It's interesting. I've been having to tell some of my friends who know me well when they watch it. Okay, so just be aware. This is a scary film, and perhaps you may not. There are a lot of things that I do that I wouldn't. I wouldn't normally do, and so they can, because they know me, can take that, put that at arm's length. What's interesting, though, you're right, the mechanics, if you get into the mechanics of it, it is repeat, repeat, repeat. There are some actors who can shoot a scene, and immediately when they hear cut, it's laughter and pleasantries, et cetera, et cetera. Other actors are completely absorbed in the moment, and I'm sure we're going to get into that conversation.
Oh, yeah, the method acting. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. And they come in full, which is great, and they do not break. And I feel like there needs, for me personally, especially with a role like this, there needs to be a happy medium where I'm coming into the set ready to work full and fully loaded, but I can still create, in my mind, a bit of levity, because if I put myself in the moment, which we're really trying to do, you're creating a truthful environment under those circumstances, or at least one that looks believable, not necessarily truthful, believable, right?
Yeah.
Believable to the viewer. Right. I feel like if you get wrapped up in that 100%, we've talked about this, Bryan, you might head in that direction. And I'm not one of those actors who will allow myself to. I have to have my life and live my life fully and whatnot. That was an interesting moment that you were there. I was trying to remember which times that you were on the set, and it's ironic that you would have seen that. Not ironic, but really fulfilling that you saw that scene being shot.
Yeah.
And it was something. There was something. Vera Farmiga is such a talent, and she does not let you go. She engages with you and will not let you go, and is such a good partner in a scene where you're both on the ride together and you're going 90 miles an hour on the ride.
Yeah.
Even with that small moment like that.
I can see that.
It makes perfect sense, because, I wasn't even acting. I wasn't an actor there with you that day. I was working in the capacity of consultant, really, mostly, for that particular day. And, when I came up and had to sort of show both Patrick and Vera some of the things that Shavs wanted me to explain to them about a particular method for cleansing the altar that you were working at for that scene. I could very much sense still the energy of the Warrens in both of them, and even though we were having conversations, from a consultant to actors, there was still the aura of their characters very much alive, because they were on set, they were in costume, they were engaged in that particular function of the archetypes, and it's very different people than who they are, as Patrick's kind of, he's kind of a goofy kind of, really kind of fun guy, where Ed Warren's much more serious than he is. Yeah,
that's true.
It's funny. It's kind of funny, but yet in that moment, when I was instructing them and what I would do as an exorcist, having to cleanse an object, it felt like I was actually doing the real work, and I was teaching colleagues, professionals in the field, how to cleanse an object for real. It did not feel like consulting work at that moment. It didn't feel like I was just guiding actors through a scene. It felt like I was doing my job. And that was really startling for me because, again, I was not expecting to experience that side of the archetype. It wasn't what I was there to do. And I found that completely fascinating. So it makes me wonder, and that gets us into kind of tonight's subject matter, you do find the archetypes to be sometimes seductive because you're making a conscious effort, Eugenie. You're talking about how you made a conscious effort to not let these dark things into your life. But at the same time, they're so seductive. Do you find that sometimes you have to stop yourself and not get carried away?
Yes and no. First of all, and that, going back to what you just said, and then I'm going to start on the seductiveness of that. The environment that we are in, the crew created such a realistic environment, along with the actors. So the actors are pushing, are accelerating that environment to create even the realness. It's like the cherry on top. But the crew, the kudos to the crew, the lighting and the set design and the hair and the makeup and everyone else, you can't help but not be and think you're where you are because of what you're seeing. And that's our job, too, is to put ourselves under that, under that dome and be where we are under that dome and separate ourselves to a certain extent, or put aside the fact that behind the walls are monitors and the hair and makeup crew and craft service and stuff like that. So I'm so glad you said that you felt that you were there and you were one and you felt like you were teaching colleagues, because that means that everybody's doing their job. And that's one thing that is so incredible about the Conjuring universe and was a big surprise to me. Not to say that I've been on other sets and it wasn't like that. Absolutely it was. But every time I'm on a set, it's just this this joy. Oh my gosh, I get this. I get to play in the sandbox again with really great people, and they're going for the same thing that we're all working together as a team. So getting in that environment. So in regards to making it a yes and a no, I, as an actor, my experience and what I teach in my class is we must put ourselves in the environment so that we're creating a truthful looking experience for the viewer and for us, right? Because if we're not speaking truthfully, we're not speaking in a truthful tone, if we're not acting, if we're not being, if we're not holding ourselves a certain way, if we don't have certain, if we haven't answered certain questions for ourselves, we're going to get up there and we're not going to do what is asked of us to do. We're not going to be able to do that. Yeah. And so in my mind, how I go about finding these characters, like the occultist, is not necessarily by looking at the occultist and saying, oh, it's an occultist. What do occultists do? I'm going to become an occultist. I can't do that. That's just not in my wiring. What I do in order for me to find that performance, the first thing I need to do is find the facts of what her story is. What is it in that script that I know that's in there, which is our Bible, right, on set, the writer's words we have to look at because that's our guidebook, right? Like the Bible is in our life, right?
Right.
So that is the guidebook, and it will have clues like Easter eggs in the script to flesh out who our character is. So that's number one. Then I go about finding out who is this person? What does she want in a general sense? And I do this with my actors, and it's, for me, honestly, it's loads of fun. I get a big high, I get a big high from it.
Yeah.
What does she want? So let's say if I'm working with one of my actors in my class, and I say, well, let's try to find your want. What do you want? Tell me anything. You want a car? You want to, get a new dining room table? I mean, I don't know. You want a dog? And we boil it down. Why is that important? What is going on? What's happening? Why is that, important to you? Why, if you want a car, what do you want to do? You want transportation. Well, why is transportation so important? Can't you take the bus? Well, you want a shiny new car. Well, what does that do for you? And so it all boils down to the deeper wish. And the deeper wish and the desire together create what's called the spine phrase. And once you have the spine phrase of a character, you can go anywhere. Once I realized, this spine phrase of this occultist, okay. In my mind, it's my choice. What does she want? What is her ultimate desire? And once I figure that out, now I can then go, does it match my spine phrase? Well, in some areas, it might. Not to say that I'm wicked and horrible and I do horrible things to people. I don't, but
we all have our dark side, Eugenie.
Right, exactly. Oh my God. So if I find that spine phrase, then we can look at that character logically and go, okay, now I can justify not. During the time that I'm filming, I can justify her behavior because her want is X, Y, and Z. Does that make sense?
It does. And it actually helps to maybe break it down a little bit more clearly, I think, for myself, and I'm sure for everyone listening, in terms of how you discover a character and how do you become a character that is absolutely so different from yourself, because I mean, obviously you're not an antisocial, murderous,
right,
pseudo-satanic, occult practitioner. At least I don't think so.
Well, correct. And this character has this. She's human, but she also. What I tried to pull in was her humanity.
Yeah.
Her. Who she is, that even though she's doing something that's horrid, just evil, there's something deeper going on.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not, I'm just being evil for evil's sake. And I personally cannot justify when I look at, sometimes I'll watch a TV show or a film or something, and I'll look at a character and go, okay, I don't get why what's with this character. I don't understand the motivation behind the writing of a character, because there's nothing, I don't know whether it's the actor or the writing. But with this character, I could say, I see what's happening here, and I know how I can wrap my mind around it. As a nice person, I can wrap my mind around being this character. I auditioned once for a character. I don't know. It was before COVID, and there was something about the character, and they were looking for men and women, and I went, okay, but it was just pure evil, and the dialogue didn't take me anywhere except this person just doing horrible stuff after stuff after stuff. And I thought, I can't find this character's spine phrase. I'm lost. And I'm glad that I did not go forward with that with that role. It has to be something that's there that catches me. So that's, anyway, I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's what I do, and I'm very passionate about it.
Well, I mean, it sounds as though, I mean, there's different, obviously, approaches that actors take to this, and you're not taking that method approach. You said that you need to keep that separation, and I saw it on set. I mean, I remember you had a different. I guess I don't know how much we can talk about this. You can stop me if we can't talk about these things, but there were your character kind of went through a bit of a transition during production. And you were in a different costume. I think there was actually a very different approach to the character originally. And you had more of like it was more of a crazy, wild, feral woman in the woods kind of motif going on. and you had the sigil, the satanic sigil, that they had printed on your hand. And I remember after you finished a scene, a very intense scene with Vera, which fortunately is in the movie. At least we get to see that interaction there. It's wonderful. You came over, behind, offset, with us, where we were sitting in the producer's area, and you showed me the sigil they had put on your hand, and I asked you, I said, is it a real one? You're like, well, I hope not. It turns out it was a real one.
Again, let's go back to keeping things at arm's length. You are not welcome. But I feel like I have this conversation, okay, so I'm doing this, just want to let the universe know, all right, I've got a bubble.
Respect my boundaries.
In my bubble. Right.
So do you teach this to your students when you're teaching the skills of acting? Is this something that you actually cover in various lessons, or how? I know that teaching theater is a different kind of classroom than, let's say, teaching biology or something more conventional.
Right, sure.
But I mean, is this something that you do talk about?
I try not to talk about how to put that satanic thing on the palm. I really do. Just kidding. Anyway, I do talk about this. And one of the things that I teach a lot, I teach scene study and also teach the Meisner method. And the Meisner method is not only incorporates the spine phrase, but it also, you use your imagination and you base it in truth. So the truth, if we can find the truth and use that as a substitution, then we find the truth and we go, oh, what would happen if this happened? Oh, what would happen if this situation happened in my life? And I use someone that is important to me. Absolutely. What that basis does for me is your imagination can go wild, crazy. You can go anywhere with your imagination. And if you base it in truth, and you really can justify that in your mind, like, oh my gosh, yeah, that could happen, then you've got you're really getting close to a truthful performance. And that's what I did for The Conjuring, and that's what I teach with my students. For example, my husband is, he's such a nice, fun guy, and he has gone, poor guy, in my imagination, he's gone through the ringer. Every one of my family members has just been, he's had affairs on me. He's, been in the hospital on his deathbed, and he's blah, 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 blah. But the man is very healthy. He's, never, as far as my knowledge, never had an affair. And he's very, fun and wonderful and everything else. But if I use my imagination and I think, oh my gosh, this is a man I love with my heart and soul, and if this happened. Now, think of this. If he was on his deathbed and we could do whatever we could do to help him, if I could do whatever I could to help him, I would do it. And that's where I get in my mind and I go, oh my gosh. In fact, I'm sitting here in my chair. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that.
Yeah.
So we can't. That's where I let my imagination grow, and that's what I will let in. That's what I will let in my bubble. So now, in The Conjuring, I did use him. In my mind, I did. In my mind, what else would justify her behavior? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So why not? And so it's the substitution, and the substitution of I must do everything in my power to get this result because that is, this has to happen. You see where I'm going?
Yes.
So a lot of actors will use the Meisner method. They'll use method acting, which method acting is a bit different. But it's similar. I mean, honestly, Stanislavski, many, many years ago, he's the father of modern acting, and he really revolutionized acting and gave us all these wonderful exercises, brought all these wonderful exercises. And so lucky us, we can pick and choose different tools that we want, and all these wonderful performers or methods, people who trained under him. You have Uta Hagen, and it just goes on and on and on. And so it's all based on the same stuff. We have, and it's if you look at a book, when you're writing a book, an author has a protagonist and an antagonist, or same with the script. And you've got a who, what, when, where, why, and you have something that happened before to create the events to start. And then you have really the energy after the end that continues on. And so really, when you're looking at a performance, we all basically do the stuff. It's just that some people do it slightly differently than others, right?
Right.
And so with method acting, what they'll do, what people who are method actors who just are really are passionate about what they do, they live and breathe that character, and they will continue for weeks and come to the set full and go home as the character and write a whole biography about the character, which actually for many of my students, I encourage them to do. I think it puts another tool in their toolbox to help understand why a character is doing what she's doing. And we have to understand the why. And we also have to understand what has put her or him in that situation at that moment in time.
And that's where you capture the essence. You capture the essence of that moment and are able to connect with something that might be outside of your paradigm. Obviously, an actor having to play someone who is basically like a criminal. I mean, your character was essentially, she should be locked up. And I think that's what made her so frightening, honestly, is that, the Warrens typically are going up against not superhuman, but supernatural beings. And this is the first time that, even though obviously there's like a demonic presence that's behind it all, it really was a human evil that they were fighting this time.
Yeah.
And I mean, Eugenie, you captured it. I mean, you were the absolute highlight of that film, because you captured it so convincingly, so well. And it was such a pleasure to watch. And I was actually a little worried about watching this one, because I had seen so much of it that I didn't know if my experiences behind the set would have, I guess, taken me out of the reality too much, that I wouldn't be able to watch it with the same mind as an audience member, completely losing myself in it because I had seen so much of the behind the scenes. But it didn't affect me too badly because once they put it all together, it's also magical. But
Right.
but your performance there, it was truly haunting because here's somebody who's a real person, you know. And there's a story there, and I guess it kind of alludes to that, that there's a lot of backstory that we don't know, and that's very typically Conjuring. And I know that there's a comic book now. I saw a comic book cover with you on there. They used your likeness. What's that feel like, by the way? I mean, is that a little haunting? That there you are, but it's not really
I think
you.
That's the coolest thing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, but I think it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Being in that comic book, I can't believe it.
You're now
My
immortalized
sister
in DC. Yep.
I know. In fact, I've had people, friends of mine who are big comic book collectors, and they've been writing to me and saying, "Oh my gosh, you're in a comic book. You're in a comic book." I do have, before we go on, speaking of haunting, and I want to do a big shout out to both of you and your entire group. One of the stories when I'm interviewed, I'm going to share here that meant a big deal to me, and I have to say it also made me feel very comfortable on set. And I say this with all of my heart, was number one, knowing that you blessed the set before we started filming, and everyone that was there, and that you could touch and be with and be a part of, and then returning and being a part of my set, and it made me feel, and I'm kind of getting a little choked up here, Bryan, but it made me feel safe. It made me feel secure. It made me feel like I was doing this with the cloak of armor around me, and I truly appreciate that. And I tell everyone that I know when they ask about this film, I said, "Do you want to hear something that was really cool?" And so, thank you. I'm sure a lot of people have thanked you, but I just really am your big number one fan, and that really meant a lot to me.
It means the world to hear that. It really does. A blessing is such a simple thing in superficially when you're just watching it, but there is so much depth to it, and it's always wonderful when people are truly connecting with it, and and I always try to do it in a way that is the most universal, because I know that when I go into a place that has a lot of people, like obviously a movie set, you don't know necessarily the religious or spiritual backgrounds of everyone there. You don't know even if they have a spirituality that they practice or not. And so I don't want to ever, come in and be offensive. I try to always connect to the people that I'm working with. And I think that's one of the special things about this ministry, and that it allows me to do that, because we're not being governed by some red tape at the Vatican or some kind of oppressive, religious requirements. We're free. This church is a church of freedom, and I really, protect that with my life, honestly. But because it allows me to do that. And so it makes me feel good to hear that, it had such an impact on you and hopefully others there. I know the holy water bottles that we handed out were very popular. So,
yeah.
But
I still have mine.
Do you have it? Oh, excellent. If you ever run out, just let me know. We'll send you more.
Excuse me. Tell me. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But speaking of that day, you weren't there. We were there on the first day of shooting. I don't think you were there yet. And
no,
we met you after.
I'd gone back.
Right. But when we were there on the first day of shooting, I was asked to kind of just address everybody that was there, and most of the main cast was there, all of the primary crew, I think all of the main producers, everyone they gathered around in the Warrens' living room, and I basically addressed them by saying, and you can hear a clip of this in one of the documentaries, those little mini documentaries that the
Faith and Fear.
Yes, that the studio put out, where I talk about how, sound stages are like temples. We call the movie The Conjuring, but I mean, really, this is conjuring. I mean, you are truly conjuring something when you work on a movie. Yeah. It doesn't even necessarily have to be about the occult. It's just, movie making is about magic. It's about creating worlds. And you are building these worlds out of the substance of archetypes. And one thing that I've learned in my work as an exorcist, also as an esotericist, is that archetypes are sentient. They're living things. And I would say, not to get too philosophical, I would say archetypes are actually even more real than we are. And the reason I say that is everything that we assume to be our identity is actually a combination of them, different manifestations of these archetypes in different proportions create identity. And when you take these archetypes apart, well, there's nothing left of the self at that point. The self is truly made up of all of these archetypal patterns of various degrees. And so when you are building an entire world, which is, of course, every story is built on the primary archetypes that we see in Jungian psychology. It's all there. Honestly, you could tell an entire story with a tarot deck, because every tarot card is a different primary archetype of the human experience. That's what tarot decks are. They're just basically all of the 78 primary archetypes all working into the story of humanity, and they can obviously all the countless combinations that they can create the world or the story that the tarot wants to tell you. That's what a movie is, essentially the same thing. So when and this is what I said that day, when you are obviously working with these things, they take on entirely a life of their own. And so when you're dealing with something that's dark, like what you necessarily have to work with for a horror film, when you're dealing with something that's dark and disturbing and maybe a little dangerous at the same time, and you're giving life to these things, and these things are growing sentiently. The universe does not know the difference between an actual satanic ritual and a movie that's pretending to do one. It does not know the difference. The archetypes will spawn and do what they are being conjured to do regardless. So a lot of times, and I hear this over and over again with horror directors. Denny Draven's another good friend of ours, and he works with doing all these really wild horror films, and he has had these experiences. They will come alive, and I know that the Annabelle doll has been seen on set moving of her own volition. So did you?
Yeah.
Reason why
not glad you didn't see it.
Yes. So my
I'm
question.
not saying that to the world, to the universe. Go ahead.
Yeah.
For me, not to watch that film. Go ahead.
You might need to see it though, because I think your character's gonna. I get. This is just my speculation. I don't know anything. Okay, I'm not privy to any secret knowledge about The Conjuring, but I just have, as an audience member, as a fan, I have a little speculation that all these characters, the nun, Annabelle, the occultists, are all going to have some kind of connection somewhere. Yeah. So you're probably going to have to watch Annabelle eventually, Eugenie.
Eventually. I know. I'll have to have you there.
We can watch it together. How about that?
One thing I noticed, Bishop, when you were giving that speech, Bishop, Sister Max and I were on either side of you, and I was looking into the audience or the crew, so to speak. And when you were talking about, hey, you're creating this, you're doing this, the archetypes, that, everybody was like you saw a lot of heads going up and down, like, yeah, you're right, yeah. And I mean, it was good to see that they were getting it. It wasn't just some priest showing up splashing holy water on the set. You actually gave a good speech that they all understood, no matter what their background was. And I thought that made me feel good.
Yeah.
To have you explain that to them, and everybody understood what you were coming from, and I think they took that to heart.
I think so too, and thank you for saying that.
I'm sorry, Bryan.
No, go ahead.
I think that lends itself to the quality of the Conjuring crew, that the producers have brought in, and they've worked with many of the crew again and again and again, and they are family. And they are there. They work as a team, and they've got such love and appreciation for one another. And then, of course, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. The production team is so cool and so supportive of one another. And hearing that, it makes me glow.
Yeah.
Happy inside. Thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, honestly, it's so wonderful to hear, because I've always suspected that if anybody would really understand some of these things that really the layperson does not get at all. Like when we go into a case, for example, we got a family that's in crisis in the real world who's suffering from what they believe to be some kind of malevolent spiritual problem. And they want an exorcist to come in and figure out what's wrong and fix it. It's very hard to explain to a family like this who has no esoteric foundation to kind of explain that, okay, well, you're going to see these things through through the lens of your paradigm, which is, of course, going to be spirits and demons. But understand that a lot of these things are being literally produced by your own fears, anxieties, and the natural proclivity of the human mind to create things. Now, this is not to say it's all in their head. Quite the contrary. I would actually argue that the entire universe is all in our head. I mean, honestly, cut someone's head off, there's no more experience there. So, clearly the head's very important. And I think we kind of marginalize it down by making it like, well, it's all imagination. Well, imagination's more real, because what you believe about your experience is far more important than what actually is, because your experience defines who you are. And I think that's something that an actor understands intrinsically. So when I gave that little talk, I was hoping that, we'd see some nodding heads. I was hoping that if there's ever going to be a group of people who get this, it's going to be people that work in production, because they are literally playing with the same things I do, only from a completely different vantage point. But to that credit, did you experience anything by working on this set? Did you have, or maybe the blessing worked and you were just perfectly okay? Did you have any paranormal experiences?
I did not. And I'm very happy that I didn't.
Good. That's good.
Yes. And I think the blessing, in my opinion, the blessing worked. And I don't remember hearing, you know what? Actually, Paul Wilson, who plays the father in the beginning of the film, not the priest, but the dad.
Yes.
Paul did
the dad, little boy.
Yes. In the beginning, he said they were filming in the house, not the house on the set, but it was the exterior. They were doing the exterior shot, the shot is when they were moving into the house. Mm-hmm. And he was saying that there was a light, inside the real house where they were, they would do the okay and rolling, and everybody went into action and moving into the house. That was the shot. So right when they started, boom, all of the power goes out. All the outside generators, everything goes out. And then they got to figure that out. And then when the scene, when they would do the takes, like everybody would go in the house, that was part of the action. And when they went in the house, one of the PAs in the house said, "Don't go in that room." and I said, "Paul, why?" And he said, "Because there was a lamp that wasn't plugged in that was turning on." And I went, "Okay, I'm glad I wasn't there that day. That's good. That's good. Nothing happened with me. And no. So that is the only thing that I know that might have been an experience that someone had, crew member had, or a cast member had.
Yeah.
I didn't have any, thankfully.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, honestly, that was the goal, was to keep a nice environment for all of you to work and not have any kind of paranormal disturbances interrupting the course of the filming. So it seems like we've succeeded in that, and that's always a really a good thing, I think. But we are talking with
that's a win.
Yeah, we're talking with Eugenie Bondurant from The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to take a short break here. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone, to Vestiges After Dark. We're getting ready for the second half of the show here, and our guest is Eugenie Bondurant. She played the Occultist on the Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. And we're discussing the occultism of acting, how living archetypes become part of the acting experience, and how one protects themselves from this reality. It's a wonderful discussion so far, so fascinating, and we would love for you to be a part of it. So now we're opening lines. If you have a question, please give us a call, 516-453-0138. If you want to ask Eugenie something about her work, whether it be about The Conjuring or not. The number to call, 516-453-0138. Call in now, get into the queue, and we'll take you on the air. Don't go away. Once again, if you have a question for any one of us about tonight's show, the number to call is 516-453-0138. That's 516-453-0138. Lines are now open. And I put the number up on the screen for YouTube viewers. If you would like to, if you don't want to write it down, there it is. And you can also ask questions in the chat room if you've got any questions at all to participate in tonight's discussion. Sister Mary Joan is watching that chat. Sister, have you seen anything since we've been talking, or has everybody just been engaged?
There was one question.
Yeah.
There was one question earlier. I don't know if it was meant as a question to Eugenie, but it says, what do you as an actress have in common with the characters you play? Do you try to find I think what they're trying to say is, do you try to find a common denominator? You may have discussed it earlier, where you try to find something with the character that you can relate to and then go with it.
Yes, actually, I try to. And that's why it's difficult for other characters, if I'm auditioning for something and I can't, and if there's nothing there, I mean, it's like if there's nothing that I can resonate, it's difficult for me to wrap my mind around the character. Now, so yes, I do, and I try to see who is she as a human being. I mean, this character is human, and she is the daughter of a man and a woman. And what is her life? Who is she? And, I am the same, I am the daughter of a man and a woman. I'm someone's daughter. And when we look at this character, she is too. In fact, the father is brought into that, which is, to me, very compelling. That's a compelling storyline.
Right.
And I was very curious, and I still am, on what was their life like. And a
lot of people are asking that question.
Yeah, I chose to love him and respect him, even though the result for him was not good.
Not the end. Nope.
We had a spoiler.
No spoiler, but no, it was good for him in the end. Let me tell you.
Right. So yeah, I mean, of course, do not have a commonality with treating my parents like that, but so yeah, I do feel that way. I feel like this is she is a type A personality, and she's very strong-willed, and in certain areas I'm very strong-willed myself. Otherwise, there's certain things, characteristics of myself that I brought to this character. I was asked, you don't get this often, but when you do, as an actor, it is really cool when the production team and the director, our wonderful director, Michael Shaw, asks, well, what do you think about this? And I am able to chime in and say, well, I think she would do blank, or I think she would do this, or I think she would have her hair this way, or whatnot. So yeah, in fact, a little fun fact, the hair, not to be, it has nothing to do with conjuring or conjuring a character, but the hair, her hair, I said I really, what we see in the film, my grandmother's hair was very similar to hers.
Really?
And I have a photograph of my grandmother, and I said, that's what I think she would have. She's not the type of person. In that time, in that era, women were still going to the beauty parlor every week. But I don't think this character would have done that. But she would have been able to do her hair in a certain way.
Proper.
But she wouldn't have, yes. And it would have been very controlled. And my grandmother, who did go to the beauty salon every week, had her hair.
Mine still does.
Of it. Yeah. There you go. And so, it's a small area, but it's one to me that I thought, okay, you have to remember as an actor, your job is also to build the bridge, the character. You have the character in you, and you're constantly finding ways to build the bridge across and create the story, and you in the story. So, and
it's the same thing in undercover work. I was going to mention this briefly. So when I worked undercover work, they taught us that, and I didn't do any deep cover. It was just small, few hours at a time undercover work. But you do have to develop what we call a backstop or a backstory, and you have to find something with the so-called character you're playing, whether you're buying dope or selling dope. You've got to find something similar to that character you're trying to portray. So when your bad guy's asking you questions, you can tell them the truth, so they know you're not lying. So you have to develop that character as well. And earlier when you were talking about it can be seductive, you are so right, because there were times in the early 2000s, the first few times I was horrible. But when you start to get used to the elements you're around and know what you need to do, and you develop that character, so to speak, it becomes very easy. And then you find yourself in the same places that your targets are in. Like we would find ourselves always going to, honestly, we would go to strip clubs and bars to try to develop sources where we'd do our dope deals in the parking lots. And you have to be really careful, because once you cross that line, it can definitely take you over. And there was a dark time in the early 2000s when I was drinking too much, riding a motorcycle too crazy, and I had to bring myself back to reality, because you can lose yourself. So there is an important difference. You have to integrate yourself into that character you're about to play, but you have to be able to also remember what reality is. So, when you get home, you shut it off. That's why method acting to me is so dangerous. Because, and you know more than most. I mean, look what happened. Keith Ledger's the perfect example of what happened to him.
Exactly.
Robin Williams is another one.
You are doing, well, first of all, you're doing things that I have my actors do. So thank you. You're communicating that. And it's part of what you're doing. You're writing your own script. It's long form improv, but you're doing it on a continual basis, which is habit forming. You're creating a habit.
Yes, and it can become pretty dangerous.
Yeah. I don't want to create the habit. If you've got a shoot that's a 3-month shoot, you're not necessarily shooting every single day. There's some days that you have off, you have the weekends off. But like you're establishing that character. You're going in and out, like you just said. I'm putting myself in your shoes, and I'm thinking, holy smokes.
Right. I mean, if you have, you're in a dangerous situation because everybody's got guns. So you have to, when you're giving your performance, you really have to be convincing. So sometimes you really immerse yourself into that character you're playing. And I, of course, played a biker chick. That was what I did. Dealt with a lot of Mexican gangs and methamphetamine trade. And you could really lose yourself. Once you start a rapport with some of these folks, you can start to see how they think. And some of it is pretty seductive. I mean, that carefree life of screw authority, we're going to do what we want. So you really definitely have to have a base. That's where it's good to have a good support system to be able to come out of it.
Did you feel like you had a good support system when you came out of it? Or how did you recognize that you were?
For a few years, I did not. And it wasn't until later I realized I needed to put myself in check, because there's that one moment where you look in the mirror in the morning after a hard night of drinking and doing stupid stuff, and you realize, yeah, this isn't me anymore. So I was able to reel myself in, but I've known people that do get lost in it, and they end up losing their way. So I was very fortunate. So that's what scares me. That's what fascinates me. One thing about method acting is, how do these guys put themselves in check? Like Daniel Day-Lewis and Christian Bale, they go really deep into character, and sometimes it can end up on social media. You know what I mean? So
Eugenie, there's a question in the chat room from Lightning Thunderlove.
Hello, Lightning Thunderlove.
They ask. Definitely. They ask, if the character is malevolent, there is always light and good to look at. So they're asking, do you see in the character of the occultist both those good and bad qualities? And I'd like to actually add to this kind of what you're already talked about. I think I already have the answer, because I think you've already alluded to this quite explicitly already. But I mean, from a religious and spiritual point of view, particularly coming from the Christian worldview that I do, it's recognized and understood that there is a darkness within human nature. There's obviously other philosophies, secular humanism for one, that kind of takes the idea that humans are basically good and they just kind of go astray. But from a religious standpoint, from the Judeo-Christian worldview, it's the other way around. There is the fallen nature has corrupted us. And so there's darkness that lives within us that we must constantly fight against. So do you find, in relation to the question of Lightning Thunderlove, do you find also that you draw on your own inner darkness to be able to connect more completely with a character like the occultist? Do you find that you're doing that, or is that just way too personal and one of those steps that you just won't go across because it violates the bubble? I'd be curious to hear your response to that.
So the light in the dark, yes, in part of my backstory, I have her. This is not in the script at all, but the motivation of why she's doing what she's doing. Because if you don't have a motivation, then why is she there? Yeah, it's got to be there, present in the character. And I, even though in the script, evil, there's a reference to evil that my father in the script says. My perspective is she's motivated to do what she does because of something else. And so that is that light part, because otherwise she would never. I mean, I think she's dabbled in the occultist, and as an occultist, she's dabbled in the supernatural, and she's part of that, and she's involved in really dangerous, dark things, and she's pretty proficient. In regards to my experience in going into the dark and tapping into some dark force, it's difficult to answer that because being put in the circumstances, and if I'm driven by the overwhelming reason and urgency of having to do what I need to do, her, the occultist, her, me, whoever that is, the occultist, that her urgency in doing what she needs to do then, right then, and having it complete, then I've got to create a justification. But I personally, Eugenie Bondurant, don't personally dare to go into the dark side and wish people ill or life ill. I wish life for life. I wish for joy. I wish for happiness.
Good.
I wish for peace. I wish for health. And so I can't, my interpretation, maybe people might be offended by this, but my interpretation of this character is inherent of her finding and fighting for something that she loves.
Yeah.
And that is her justification for doing these bad things, because she's doing for a loving purpose. Now, that seems contradictory, doesn't it? Because she's doing horrible things for a good reason.
Well, many horrible things in history have been done for what
Yes.
people thought were the right thing.
Yes, boom, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And they think in their minds, oh my gosh, I'm doing these horrible things because I love humanity. I want humanity to prosper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all know that. And so they're driven by that. I chose, instead of an overall view, I chose a very specific view for her.
Yeah.
And so instead of me thinking, oh, this is horrible and bad and wicked and just awful, and actually getting into the nitty-gritty of, this is happening, I chose to stick with the spine phrase, going back to the spine phrase again, and why I was doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
What is the underlying meaning? And for that love, you see?
Yeah.
So even when the father gets killed, it's still for the love. And I personally knew, in my mind, I felt like she loved her father, but this is something she needed to do. This other thing came first. Completing this ritual came first over her father. So now, there was one time when we did some additional footage in February. There was one time where we were at my altar. I don't know what I'm talking about. Actually, the occultist altar, excuse me.
See, they're seductive. They're seductive. Usually,
it was
you gotta look out.
while you were there.
More talk to her. Okay, so at this altar, and they've got me in front of the altar, and I'm, a lot of matches in this film. I got pretty proficient at doing that. So I'm lighting a match, and I throw the match in my vessel, in my goblet, and it goes whoosh, and the fire goes up. It's got, fire starter in there, so the flame goes up way high. And I'm throwing, you only see snippets of this, but I'm throwing all these herbs and beautiful, they look beautiful in the fire. I mean, if I was a pyromaniac, it would have been fantastic because I would have been in heaven. But it looks so beautiful when you throw it in. But what I was saying, you didn't really catch a lot of this, were these Latin words calling on the spirit to complete the task.
Mm.
And I'm doing this, and I'm going in and out, I don't want to say in and out of the fire, but I'm getting close to it and backing up and getting close to it with my face and backing up. And I really started getting into it. And it started becoming really fun So
interesting.
And afterwards, again, let's go back to that. The overall theme. One of the themes of tonight is that seductive feeling of, wow, that was really cool and really fun, and hot. Whoa! And then it dawned on me, we stopped, and then they were going to shoot it from a different angle, and it dawned on me, Eugenie, you've got a lot of hairspray in your hair. Don't get too close to the fire.
Right. Yeah, that is very important.
Right. So that was the time where I went, erase, finish the scene, in your own little way, cleanse yourself, and then come back to the center of who you are, Eugenie, and do that. Because I did realize I was getting a little carried away.
Very good.
Yeah.
Small little things, so.
Well, the Conjuring series is known for kind of giving us a story that has somebody in it or something in it, and we all know that there's a lot of backstory and history there, but in the particular movie, we don't necessarily get too much of that. And then down the road, they come back with a prequel. They did that with The Nun. They did it with, Annabelle. Yeah. It's very possible. I think they're even talking about doing the Slender Man backstory, or at least doing one that's specifically about that. I don't know if that's still in pre-production or if they've delayed that. I don't really know. COVID's messed up a lot of things, so I don't know. But it's very possible, because I know that audiences are really thirsting for a whole lot more of the occultist's backstory, and getting maybe even more than what we were able to get from, even the limited backstory that's in the movie, The Conjuring 3. So, assuming they come back and ask you to return to this character, are you enthusiastic? I mean, outside of obviously the career decision, which is a completely different matter. I mean, somebody's going to offer you a major role to come back. I mean, clearly, that's motivation. But is there any kind of
fingers crossed?
Yeah, I mean, is there any kind of apprehension though?
You know what? I think we're conjuring that.
Yeah,
do it, right?
That would be a great thing to conjure. But do you have any? Do you have any like emotional apprehension to revisit this character, or does she scare you at all? I mean, when you see her on the screen, is it frightening to watch?
No.
Not at all.
I have been frightened sometimes. There are a few things that scared me, like that took me aback, because I was so used to being on that set, and we did it so many times that we would retake and retake and retake, so many retakes. The time where I'm with Ed in the dining room, and what happens, I didn't realize what takes me back are things that I don't expect that happen in editing, and so I would love to revisit this character because I too am curious about her. And I'm curious about her story, and I think she's very interesting, and I'm curious how she got to that point, why she crossed over. I personally think that she wasn't raised that way. You get from the father that was he loved her, and he when she was a child, there's this beautiful book with photos. He educated her, and there was that relationship. So what was the turn that happened? That's human. That's human nature. We all want to know what makes someone turn to the dark side. So I think I know a lot of people are asking what made her turn to this type of darkness. What made her go to the evil side of life, and what what caused it? What was the tipping point? It's human nature to want to know why these things happen.
Well, it sounds to me like when I watch the film, I think there's some implication there that because her father was obviously this priest who was collecting all this stuff that the church would rather forget existed, that she might have stumbled into this little underground collection and, maybe was seduced by...
Yeah, they do infer that.
Yeah, it's kind of inferred. I kept thinking the whole time, if this priest had been a Nicolaitan priest, he wouldn't have had to hide his entire relationship, and everything would have been happily ever after.
I thought of that too.
Yeah.
Darn it. Why is that the case that, they have to...
the clerical celibacy, I'm telling you, that's enough darkness right there to create all the problems in Conjuring 3. So there you go.
Let men be men.
That's right. Let people be people.
Exactly.
I mean,
Right.
Amen.
Yeah.
Let them fall in love. Let them do what
Love
comes
is the most powerful
naturally.
force on the earth. Why would you deny it to someone?
It does not
Correct.
make practical sense, and it's obviously very damaging to the psychology. I mean, we're driven to a certain extent by neurotransmitters and hormones, and they when these things are not satisfied naturally as we're more or less designed to do, then problems do result from that. And I think outside of perhaps the sacrilege, I think that the movie was trying to imply there, that there was all this, underground stuff going on. But overall, it would be fascinating to see the character develop and because I'm sure there's a lot more to it than
potential.
that. Yeah.
Right.
Because there's a demon involved. We see that at the end, and and I think the implication is that this is this is probably the same demon we've been dealing with throughout the entire Conjuring series. So how did, was it something that she was doing with these books and these collections that her father had down there that might have introduced her to this, or was that how she came into the crosshairs of this demonic force, and then was she seduced further after that exchange took place? Because she wasn't possessed. That was very clear, I think, in the film.
Right.
Yeah. She was fully cognizant of what she was doing.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. That's what was interesting for me. She is doing this under her own free will. Mm-hmm. And then what's interesting though, hearing you talk, is you're talking about what makes her cross over, or what makes her go in that area. What is that motive? What was that motivation? What was that one thing? It's almost like when you're filling up a container, it goes to the top, but it's that one extra drop that makes the water spill over the side. What is the thing that makes it spill over the side? What is the trigger?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did someone show her? Was that it had? And how did it appear? Did it appear in a friendly way? I'm so curious about that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. So I have a question for you, Bryan. I was listening to one of your shows.
Yeah.
And what is it? I heard the word, and then I had to race out the scratches on the body. What does that signify? What is that? And why does all this? Why do bad things happen in the dark?
Yeah.
Why is it always the dark? And we always say the light and the dark.
Yeah.
What is it? Why are we so fearful of the dark? Is it because we can't see? What is it?
Well, there's obviously, from a psychological vantage point, evolutionary psychology would say that what you can't see makes you vulnerable, and so we are programmed by evolution. If we want to get strictly scientific here, we're programmed by evolution to be leery and somewhat somewhat cautious about the dark, because we don't know what might be in there, and familiarity is safety. I mean, this is actually the foundation to some of our greatest social problems, like racism and stereotypes. Part of the reason these things exist is because human beings are programmed to respond differently to things that they view as different from themselves. And that's part of this safety mechanism that's sort of just part of, every biological being's existence. And it becomes problematic because so many of these things have carried over into modern society and they have no place anymore. This is actually why anxiety is such a clinical problem and such a pervasive problem, anxiety and depression. It's really basically a carryover of the fight or flight response. But now that mechanism really has nothing to do because nothing's trying to eat us anymore. So what it does is it overreacts.
Broken.
Yeah, it's broken. It overreacts to things that it shouldn't be because it's still there, yet we don't really have any use for it anymore. So now it's just sort of firing when it shouldn't, and that creates the seed to clinical anxiety problems. Same thing with all these other social issues that come up. You can always be traced back to these primal mechanisms that are built within us. And fear of the dark is one of those things. Now, how it relates to the supernatural in terms of how we are dealing with, these things like scratches you mentioned, and why these things tend to happen in the dark is I think that's when the fear response is heightened. And for whatever reason, and I can give you a lot of philosophical and metaphysical explanations for why this is, that are probably outside the scope of what we're talking about. But suffice it to say for now, fear fuels these malevolent forces. It feeds on these malevolent forces. And so whatever it can do to enhance the fear response empowers it even further. And this goes back to a very basic Judeo-Christian position that unfortunately almost every Christian today is completely ignorant to it. And that is that the devil has no power of his own. He can only... the only power he has is the power we provide for him. So
what we give him.
Seduction is how he gets that power, by seducing us, to sin, seducing us to be fearful. Those energies combine to create basically a fuel source for these malevolent beings that then empower them to do other things. So fear of the dark, I think, is one of the most primal things. I mean, most children have a fear of the dark. I never did. It's probably why I do the work I do. I love the dark. To this day, I still love I love the dark. I'm a nighttime I'm a night owl. I always have been. I'm up all night and I sleep for most of the morning. That's my normal circadian rhythm.
But no monsters under the bed or alligators under the bed.
I never had that. No, and I've had some frightening experiences in the dark that don't frighten me. It's strange. Like, I've had encounters with. Part of what motivated me to get into this work is that I did one time when I was a child. I saw a demonic entity with my own eyes.
Oh.
And it came out of the darkness, and it was in my room. So, yeah, time
to go.
The natural response, I think, for most kids probably would have been pure terror, but for me, it was pure fascination and curiosity. So, rather than run and turn on the lights to be like, what the hell is this? I sat very still to see what it would do. And I think that kind of it came very close to me. It touched me, and then it just sort of dissipated.
Oh, wow!
It was a fascinating thing, and it kind of defined my work going forward. So I think my fear response is actually broken. I don't know why. It doesn't work, which is kind of helpful. At the same time, yeah, it's kind of helpful for the work that I do. Unfortunately, if I was in a really, bad situation where I needed my fight or flight response, I probably would die because it just would not turn on.
That's why you have me, Bishop. That's why you have me.
There's a picture of me, Eugenie. You might have seen it. I don't know I'm off Facebook now. I get rid of it. But when we were connected on Facebook, I had a picture of me on Stone Mountain in California, outside of San Diego, kind of like actually outside of Poway. And it's this ledge. It's this thin ledge of a broken rock that kind of extends out into where it would be like it's a massive drop beyond that. And it's just a picture of me sitting there, eating sushi. You know, and I mean,
boy.
that's probably a pretty stupid thing to do because that thing could have broken at any moment. I spent all afternoon on it. But it's like the fear response just is not there. And I don't have a fear of heights. I don't have really a fear of like spiders or snakes. I love those things. But the darkness, even me, not even having a fear response, and this is why I'm bringing this up, I still see things that happen in the dark that don't happen any other time. So I think it plays on this. I think it plays on the darkness, and even scripture kind of alludes to it. So it seems like there's archetypally, as far as how it manifests, it seems to be a like attracts like kind of phenomenon. So because these things are spawned out of the darkness is their nature, and therefore they would manifest out of that very thing that is the closest to them vibrationally, which is that particular absence of light. Now, the scratches seem to be a way of, again, instilling fear and causing a reaction, letting them know that they're there and they're being targeted. At least that's the way it is. It usually happens in threes. We had a client a few years ago. Sister Mary Joan might remember this, but we had a client. He was a medical doctor. He was, I believe, a psychiatrist, if memory serves me. And he came to us because he was, for the last, I don't know how many years, more than 10 years, I think, being constantly scratched all the time.
Yes, he's since retired.
Yeah. And I think he always said it would happen to him while he was sleeping. He'd, you know, and he even like...
Or while he was praying.
Or while he was praying, yes. And usually at night, though. Usually when it was dark. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was...
And so...
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No. I want to hear the rest of it.
No, I was just going to say that, so it's just something that seems to, again, be vibrationally compatible with the dark.
Well, it's interesting. You wonder why him? While he was praying, it just, you know, what was the attraction? And that's terrible. That just is really just so confusing that a spirit would do that and choose someone who's not choosing to open that up or I don't know. I mean, that's very curious to me.
Well, it's a lot like rape. I find it follows the same basic paradigm as rape, even down to how the victim responds to it. Because I mean, we're finally coming into a time in society where women are now standing up and speaking out against this, whereas before it used to be like a shame reaction. Let's just forget it. Let's pretend it never happened.
Right.
And
right.
So they were now setting themselves up to be victims for the rest of their lives emotionally. And you know, these are basically,
they may not even know it.
They don't even know it, as they didn't know it at the time. But I mean,
Right.
that's the result of what would happen. And so now, hopefully, you know, we're moving into a time where women are speaking up, and they are, you know, changes are being made, good changes to society that are hopefully stopping some of this reaction or lack thereof. But I find the same thing is happening with victims of demonic attack. And that's not to sort of trivialize rape at all. It's to show how serious demonic attack is. And, you know, but for people who don't understand that this is a real thing, they don't really get exactly why it is so traumatic and so devastating, and why it destroys families and destroys lives in the same way that rape can. And the fact that they sweep it under the carpet, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to go get help for it. But what I do find is that not only is it the same kind of maliciousness, the same sort of like selfish gratification that these beings get that a rapist might get. And we know, I mean, psychologists have studied this for a while. I used to find it fascinating that there was a study that was done, I believe it was out of Saudi Arabia, where one of the penalties for for rape was a complete removal of the genitals, so that they could never commit the crime again. And there were a number of them, these chronic rapists, that when they had this done to them, they used blunt instruments. So they still did it.
It's all about power.
It's about power and violence. And with the demonic, it's about power and violence. It's to deprive deprive the victim of power, so as to empower you, because you, as the rapist, or as the one who's committing the assault, you are reacting to a lack of power, and so you're going to rob it from someone that you see that has something that you want, and to do it in such a way that destroys them, destroys their spirit, that bastardizes something that should be beautiful. So in the case of rape, it's obviously it bastardizes the beauty of sex. In the case of demonic possession or demonic assault, it bastardizes spirituality. And what we do notice is that the same reactions occur across the spectrum. So what I think was happening with this particular individual with the scratches, and why him, and why was he going through this experience, I think it had to come back to sometimes an exchange of energy. Being a psychiatrist is also a very dangerous career archetypally. So when you're looking at acting, and we're talking about how actors are playing with all these dark archetypes, well, psychiatrists and psychologists have to too, because when they're dealing with psychotherapy and they're using psychotherapy to perhaps help a patient to overcome a trauma or something, the archetypes of that trauma will sometimes manifest. There's a term for this in psychology called transference. Now, they keep it strictly psychological and say it's just a transference of impression. There's like reverse transference, and you know, where you can bring this, the psychologist starts to live perhaps the delusions of the patient, and can go the other way around too. But the fact of the matter is, spiritually, it can happen too. And I think sometimes if a person's not perfectly protected and does not know how to protect themselves, see, like you do, you naturally innately know what you need to do to feel safe and to be safe, and you know, and then you had me there, so it was reinforced with what I did externally, and you do what you do internally, and that's what resulted in you being able to make this fantastic, convincing performance, and yet not have any deleterious effects. I don't think most people in the world are that good at it, that naturally good, and I think sometimes they are more at risk because of it. And so I think there's a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists, I think, would take on the spirit attachments of their patients, because a lot of their patients do indeed have spirit attachments. Most people, see, it can go either way. You'll have sometimes people that will go and have a problem, and they don't know the difference between what might be a spirit attachment or what might be genuine mental illness. And so if they're spiritually inclined, they might go to see a priest first before they go to a psychologist. But if they're not religious, then they might go to a psychologist first and never go see a priest. And the psychologist is only going to be dealing with the psychology of it. They're not going to even consider, usually. We do have a lot of psychologists that do refer us their clients. That does happen. But, you know, typically they already have a religious background or something where they already understand that there are certain things that happen that only religion can resolve, and demonic possession is one of them. But so I think that, I don't know, I mean, that's probably a long way of answering the question, but
no, I've always been fascinated by that, and I happened to be listening to one of the shows, and I went, oh my gosh, the scratches, and then it brought up the dark, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Thank you.
I think the dark is an archetype too.
It's not a long answer. It was a really fascinating answer.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's fascinating work. I mean, it really is, because you see just how powerful the human mind is. It's what it comes down to, is that everything that we do, spirit attachment is basically, can be reduced down to one simple thing, is the externalization of trauma. We can internalize trauma, which is what which is the conventional way of dealing with trauma. So typically we call that repression, right? So, a child is, let's say, God forbid, a child is sexually assaulted and nothing's ever done about it. So they repress it, and it becomes like a memory that they can't consciously recall, but yet it still afflicts them internally, and they have all these mental problems later in life, and they don't know why. That's kind of the usual way that it goes. But there's a subset of people that undergo similar trauma, but they don't repress it. They end up pushing it out. So the way that they deal with it is that they don't ever deal with the effects internally. It becomes an egregore that sort of lives outside of them and torments them from the outside in. And initially, they're the only ones that can see it. And they absolutely will see this as a demon, when really what it is a projection, a tulpa out of their own mind.
Yeah, I mean that's most of our clients.
It is.
No kidding.
Yeah. So that's what inspired tonight's show, because in a way you're not creating actual traumas, but you're simulating traumas. And these simulated traumas, the universe does not know the difference. So it's like, whether you're acting out a murder or whether you're actually committing one, as far as the universe is concerned, a murder was committed. And an egregore can be born from that.
Good point.
Yeah. And without the protection, anything can potentially happen. And so I think that that's a testament to the fact that your approach to acting is perhaps the healthiest one spiritually for those that care about such things, I'm sure not everyone does, and it's unfortunate that not everyone really sees the seriousness of it. I'm sure there are people out there that
I think Eugenie's got a good grounding, so she's okay.
Yeah. Well, you're also from
Thank you.
You're also from New Orleans. I mean, that's like one of the most spiritual places in the United States of America.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Someone mentioned what was it? Something about, oh my gosh, wasn't this difficult? And I thought, I'm from New Orleans. Come on, there are spirits, and there's a lot of that is an old city that is rich with history. Yeah. That is just it's like an umami of history that keeps on layering on top of each other. And I mean, every house and every piece of property has a story, and that story, the energy, just is there, and it's present, and it's present with the city. And I think it has something to do with it's so I'm going to say something that might sound strange, but it's the temperature, there are so many different factors there. It's the religion, it's a very Catholic city. It's it has this history of being French, then Spanish, then French, then American, and then slavery, and then all these immigrant populations coming to the city. So, and then the food culture that everybody's brought to the city. And so many generations and generations and generations of the same family have lived there. So it's rich. It's a rich cultural city. And so that kind of stuff is, I think, New Orleans, you're from New Orleans. It really speaks. That city speaks to you. When you just even getting off the airplane, you can feel it.
Oh, it's such a different, and it's so.
I agree.
The energy's so different. I'm a pilot. I don't fly that much anymore, but when I was flying regularly, when I was training to do cross country, to get my cross country certification, commercial. It was my commercial certification where you had to do several long cross countries, and by cross country it didn't necessarily mean from Georgia all the way to California. It just meant cross so many miles, and I had to pick locations where I wanted to go, and as soon as I had my opportunity to do my first cross country, it was New Orleans that I wanted to fly to. I'm so attracted to that place.
90 seconds.
In a way that I don't think I could ever describe in any other way. It was like it's just a sort of, I don't know. There's just an energy to it that is.
Yeah.
I mean, you said it well. Talking about the temperature, the food, the culture. I mean, it's the only place in America that really has all of that in one spot. It has the history.
Yeah.
Even walking by the
stories.
Yes.
Go ahead.
The absinthe bar. Oh
my gosh.
And then you had Crowley, who hung out around there, and I'm sure he'd conjured a bunch of stuff that was not probably any good.
Yeah. It's the story of that city. It's not just the story as in from history, but it's everyone's story in many different aspects.
Yeah.
The story and the history of everything that we talked about, the story and the history of the temperature, the story and the history of where it's located, the story and the history that it floods all the time, and people are just, you don't know when, hurricanes batter it every year, and the history of these generations that have lived there and lived there and lived there and lived there, and just, I feel like, speaking of that, I feel like our family is we're relative newcomers because we've only been there maybe 6 generations, so still it's that kind of strange thing that comes together. And if we're talking about food, it's like a beautiful, rich gumbo. And
yeah.
that you taste it, and it was made the day before, and it's just tastes. It's that something on your taste buds that you can't pinpoint. So, yeah, collectively. So, right, that is familiar. So, getting back to the original comment, that the stories that you hear being from New Orleans. My mother was. She wasn't a tour guide. She would welcome people into the city, like big conventions into the city, and do talks for them. And sometimes they would ask her to, coordinate these events to go and see certain things. And so she would do that for them. And, living in my home, she was a lover of history. And so you go there, and it's just history book, New Orleans history, New Orleans, Louisiana history, blah 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 blah, and it's one after the next, and even on the walls, it's all about the history and the culture.
Well, I'll tell you,
that's not what this show is about, is New Orleans, but you have to be careful when you're around me and you say those 2 words, New and then Orleans after that.
Well, we'll just have to do a part 2 on New Orleans. Why not, right?
I'm ready to go back.
No.
I am definitely ready to go back.
Go ahead. Yeah. Brian, you made that, didn't you? Was it crawfish? I can say that? You made
it was.
Crawfish stuff.
Oh, my God. Eugenie, it was so damn good.
I'm telling you, when you're up in Atlanta,
my favorite.
If ever you're up in Atlanta, let me know. Let me know when if you've got a day. You'll need to probably plan the whole day for it, because as you know, etouffee is kind of like you just kind of slow cook it. You just kind of sit around and talk and drink and have a good time while you're cooking it. But I will make you a crawfish etouffee, and I think I'm very confident it will live up to all of your expectation and experience of being. Because it's a brave thing to do. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but to cook a Cajun dish for someone who's from that area is a little bit intimidating, but I think I can handle it.
Absolutely, it looked divine. It really did.
I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at Cajun cooking. Yeah, I'm particularly etouffee. Yeah, I'd love to make it for you.
Yum. Okay, it's on.
Awesome.
Got a deal.
Just let me know. We'll plan it.
That is my favorite when I'm there for my birthday, which is at the end of April, crawfish are in season.
Yes.
So it's okay. We're wanting crawfish.
I made it last.
And,
I even made it last week. I made the shrimp etouffee. We were down in Destin, and the Gulf shrimp in Destin are amazing.
Aren't they? I know.
It's like you can't get shrimp that tastes like that anywhere else. It's just like there's something about it there. So when we go to Destin, we always pick up the fresh shrimp that was like literally swimming in the water that morning. And and we throw them in and we make an etouffee with it. So some people think my shrimp etouffee is even better than my crawfish one. I like the crawfish more, but they're both good. Yeah,
it's good to hear that you can get crawfish from where you are.
Well, we get it. We actually get it from a New Orleans supplier.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they ship it.
Oh, you are so lucky.
Yeah, they ship it fresh.
Good. Yum, yum.
Yep, it's
yum.
It's
all. For all
it's
of you listening, crawfish are not in season at this moment, so don't let anybody. I don't think they're in season.
No, they're not.
I think
they just ended like a few weeks ago. Yeah. But yeah, when they're in season,
and we always end up talking about food.
Always, and I mean that will completely distract. Well, Eugenie, it has been
my favorite topic.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show and being with us tonight to discuss your expertise in the world of performance. It's just a wonderful thing to hear. It was wonderful to talk with you and to have another one of these wonderfully deep conversations again. I would love to have you back on the show at some time in the future.
It would be fun. I would love that, Bryan.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you both. I can't wait to see y'all again, and let's make another Conjuring film, shall we?
I think we definitely need to. So just make sure that if it's a different director or something this time, make sure you tell them you need me there.
Put it out there,
right?
The Occultist.
I think if it's Michael Shavs again, I think he'll probably want me back. But I don't know if a new director would even know about me. So you might have to put in a word for me.
I can't believe it. If James Ferreira has anything to do with it, he'll have you.
Yes. Oh yeah, James. He's a great guy.
That'll work.
James and Pookie.
Gotta love James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All hail Pookie.
Yeah.
That's right.
Pookie's got his own Instagram, so he's getting up there in the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He even has.
Popular kitty.
Pennsylvania. He's a Conjuring cat.
He is a Conjuring cat.
Right.
He was found during the Nun, right? In
Vampire Kitty.
Vampire Kitty, and he has his own passport.
Yeah.
Yes, this is true, folks. I have seen it.
Yeah. Cat with a passport. I mean, that's a cultured cat. Let me tell you. You think Heathcliff is sophisticated? This cat's a real sophisticated.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, we are at the end of the show. And it was wonderful talking with you, Eugenie. Thank you again. Sister Mary Joan, thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you, Eugenie. You take care.
Thank
Always
you
a pleasure.
for inviting me. I truly appreciate it.
Hope
It was
to talk to
so
you
much
soon.
fun. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Take care,
Take care,
everyone.
hon.
Thank you all.
Take care. God
Bye-bye.
bless.
Thank you.
And for those of you who are wondering when we're going to start up again, it'll be in a few weeks, okay? So probably towards the end of August, beginning of September, we'll start up with a brand new season of Vestiges After Dark with new guests and returning guests and new topics and open lines and all that good stuff. So make sure you follow me on Twitter. Make sure you're part of the Nicolayan Network so you don't miss any updates. Until then, God bless, take care, and I'll see you out there in the ether.